Hi, welcome back to another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann, since it's now kind of officially become an Ask Eddie and Ann. Eddie Muller, the Film Noir Foundation, joined by Ann Hockens, Director of Communications for the Film Noir Foundation. And we delayed a few days in recording this installment because there was just too much weirdness going on in the country, and it was kind of hard to focus. But now things have settled down a little bit, and so we're both enthused to tackle these questions, which are really great. They're always good, but there's some stuff in this batch I think that is really great. So let's have at it, Ann. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Very well, actually. So this one is from Dave Grady. I wondered if you could ask Eddie his thoughts, reflections on the passing of Rhonda Fleming.
Yeah, I did know Rhonda, and we worked together several times. It's interesting, Rhonda was supposed to be one of the women in my Dark City Dames book. And I'm glad that Rhonda and I ended up having a very, very nice relationship, although she declined to participate in the book. And the reason for that is because Rhonda was hugely successful. She let's just put it frankly, Rhonda married really, really well. When she married Ted Mann, the theater magnate, she was a wonderful philanthropist. She created the Rhonda Fleming Mann Center for Ovarian Cancer Research at UCLA. She and Claire Trevor were the two kind of actresses that I knew of that were sort of synonymous with noir. Well, Rhonda wasn't synonymous with noir, but Claire Trevor certainly was, who were very, very affluent. Claire Trevor married Milton Bren, who kind of built Orange County. Anyway, Rhonda she just had too much invested in her life as a philanthropist to want her private life, the history of her private life, to be revealed in a book. So I remember distinctly having a phone conversation with her one day where she said, well, let me just ask you this, Eddie, how many times have I been married? And I said, what, 4? You've been married 4 times. And I named the husbands. I had done my research, and she said, no, that's not correct. I've been married once. I married Ted Mann, and that's the only marriage that matters. And I don't really want to discuss the other ones. So obviously I wasn't going to get the kind of cooperation from her that I got from the other actresses I interviewed. So we never, I was not able to profile her, but we did work together. Of course, when the Film Noir Foundation restored Cry Danger, Rhonda actually donated money to that restoration. And she came out and, promoted the restoration by appearing with Richard Erdman and me at a number of screenings of that film. And I did a thing with her at the TCM Classic Film Festival. And she was just a very genuine, sincere person who wanted to do good things with her success, which I admire very much. So I have nothing but good stuff to say about Rhonda Fleming.
Yeah. So the next one is from Peter in Toronto, Canada. I am the proud owner of all 12 North City annuals. After watching a film noir, I like looking up and reading about it in the many books I have on the genre. However, it's very difficult to find the appropriate reference in the North City books. How about an online index for all 12 and future volumes? I would find that useful too.
Okay, well, there was a gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment who kind of did a version of this a while back, and I'm embarrassed to say that we didn't adapt it in any useful way. I will say this, we will probably do this, and I suspect we will post it on the Film Noir Foundation website, but it won't be a massively detailed index. I think it would probably be an index of every article that we've had in the annuals by subject, but not cross-referenced so that every mention of Dan Duryea is referenced in an index, because it would be like doing an index for a book that's 2,500 pages long, you know?
Yeah.
So, but if we would just do, you know, Dan Duryea, stories on Dan Duryea appeared in these issues of the magazine, or in these annuals, I mean.
Yes.
And yeah, that would definitely be useful. But I can tell you, Anne, I am so happy to not do indexes, because the first few books that I published, it was in the contract that I had to create the index for the book. And I'm probably being silly, because back when I started publishing, there was no software that did that for you. And so I literally did it, you know, by reviewing every page and indexing everything by hand, and then creating this. And, you know, and it was a nightmare. I hate indexing. So if somebody out there knows how to do this and wants to do it as a volunteer thing for the foundation, let us know, because I would absolutely love that, because it would be valuable. So thank you, Peter, for the nudge from Canada. Thank you very much. We will get on that.
If someone really wants to do it, you can message me on Facebook on the Film Noir Foundation account. So this is kind of a series of questions from different people. They're sort of related about restoration. The first one is from Bruce. I'm a retired Hollywood film and television editor and wondered how I could get involved in film restoration.
I actually don't have a pat answer for this, which is weird, because I hear this so often. When it's a young person asking me this question, I just tell them, oh, you need to, you know, figure out how to get enrolled at one of the leading schools that offers these things, you know, whether it's UCLA or the Selznick School in New York, or, you know, there are various places that specialize in this. If someone's older and they have a career already established, and it's like they think it would be something kind of cool to do in retirement, it's difficult to say exactly how to get started. I mean, I could just say donating to the Film Noir Foundation is getting involved in film restoration. That is true. But if you actually want to do hands-on work in film restoration, it's a little tough. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I encourage it, because we need more people who know how to do this, but it's impossible to just do it like on a freelance basis, or it was difficult because we always restored film. And in order to have that expensive equipment that you need to do that kind of work, you're going to have to be affiliated with an organization or an entity that can afford that kind of money. Quite honestly, as everything moves towards digital, that becomes less the case. You could have independent film restorers like my friend Peter Conheim, who has done a lot of work with Nicholas Refn in restoring films. If you know, but Peter is just kind of self-taught in that regard. And, you know, so I'm not, there's no easy answer to this, is what I'm trying to tell this gentleman. If you have the passion and enthusiasm for it, you can find a way, because it's not that hard to find the people and organizations like us that are involved in this. So if you're serious about that, I mean, be a pest. And rather than deal with it in a forum like this, you know, contact me, and we'll see what makes sense. Because I really don't know enough about this gentleman's background to make a really good recommendation. But I think I've given him an idea of what the terrain is like. But anyway, that's, I mean, generally, you know, the foundation does have a scholarship. And I'm just saying, in my experience, all those scholarships that we give to young film archivists and preservationists and restorers are all young people, very young people who are you know, the money is used to pay for their tuition and their expenses going to school to learn this stuff. So that's what I know. That's like how I relate to this question. As a older person like me, who got into this. I got into it as a mouthpiece. I certainly don't know how to do restoration work myself. I have no training in that whatsoever. So take that for what it's worth.
And the next question is from Ben. You mentioned Cry Danger you mentioned Cry Danger as an example of restoration from a 16mm copy owned by Dick Powell. Any more interesting Hollywood source lore that has rescued degenerating noir classics that were in rough shape?
That's a curious question. I think this gentleman is referring to, if this is a gentleman, I think this person is referring to a comment that Alan Rhodey made on a little short TCM interstitial about the Film Noir Foundation. And that interstitial was made a long time ago. And Alan was actually referring to the fact that early on, we learned that Cry Danger was in need of restoration because the only print we could find to screen when we originally wanted to screen it was Dick Powell's personal print of the film, which was on deposit at the UCLA Film and Television Archive. That film was not used as the basis for the restoration. It turned out that, which was an interesting story. I won't go into it in any great detail, but Warner Brothers had the original elements to Cry Danger because it was distributed by RKO, and Warner Brothers took over the RKO library. So they had the material, but they did not have the rights to the material any longer because the reissue of Cry Danger was through Republic, and Paramount bought that library. So Paramount actually bought the rights to the film, but they never had any materials on it. So what the Film Noir Foundation did was manage to broker, along with UCLA assisting us in this, to Charlotte makes her appearance, that we managed to broker a deal whereby we got all those parties on the same page so that we could perform the restoration, and we have control of that restoration. That 35mm print is ours in our collection at the UCLA archive. But the Dick Powell print didn't really have anything to do with it. I know what this person is asking, like, are there any other really cool examples of like where we got material from a famous person? Not really. I mean, I was at the UCLA Film and Television Archive the day that Frank Sinatra's entire media collection was offloaded at the archive, which was pretty fascinating because he was really a movie fan. And so he had this vast movie collection, and the archive will accept all of that stuff because, as I like to say, you never know.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool as his personal collection, but it would be doubtful if, like, any of his feature films would be restored from anything in his personal collection. You would go back to the studios to find the best material to work with in that case. So, okay, I got a really long answer out of what was a really simple question. That was, we didn't use Dick Powell's print for that restoration, but.
And also, just a side note on that, there's been quite a few restorations that actually come from elements from projectionists or the descendants of projectionists.
Oh yes.
When they found a Silent John Ford film that was believed missing in New Zealand, and it was from a donation. Basically, it was in some guy's shed. His father had been a projectionist, and there it was. It's sort of like radio engineers, also responsible for a lot of the old-time radio stuff being saved, because when they were basically getting rid of everything at the radio stations, these people would take stuff home. So let's hear it for projectionists.
Absolutely, that is very true, and collectors, of course.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because my friend Dennis Bartok wrote a whole book about this, about film collectors, because it was illegal. And honestly, it still is illegal to actually collect film.
Yeah.
because it belongs to the studios and it's supposed to
Yeah.
be returned to the studios. But in many cases, that's where you find the stuff that can be restored because a private collector has held on to it. You know, did you know that Roddy McDowell was busted and because he was a huge film collector and he got in deep, yeah, with the FBI because they wanted to put him in prison because he violated all those laws about you're not supposed to a private citizen is not supposed to own films that belong to film studios and Roddy, you know, this was all pre VHS and all that stuff where you didn't have to have the film. But
Yeah.
back then, you know, Roddy liked to have you know, film nights and everything, and he would manage to get his hands on prints of movies, and he had a big collection that really got him in trouble with the law. Anyway, just a little aside there.
That's actually pretty interesting. This is from Paul Wood. I would like to ask Eddie about DOA. As far as I can tell, it's public domain. Is there any chance of this getting upgraded from its present terrible state? Like say Detour and other PD upgrade, or the other in the spectrum, It's a Wonderful Life, which floundered in the gray zone of ownership?
Yeah, I don't know the actual facts about the disposition of DOA right now. I would not be at all surprised if there was a good digital restoration of the film that came down the pipe pretty soon. I'm going to suspect that we will get a lot of questions like this. It seems pretty typical that I get a lot of questions, right? Like, when is this coming out on Blu-ray? Or and in many cases, I either don't know because people who have inroads in these things tend to hold that information close to the vest.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I do know things that I have been sworn to secrecy about, just for general principles. Like even today, I learned of a film that I love dearly that is being restored and will be available on Blu-ray next year. But every time I learn this stuff, I am sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you know, because the companies that do this, I mean, if it was us, by and large, I would tell people, but I'm very superstitious. So when we do a restoration, I don't really say what we're doing until I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, we do it. But the bottom can fall out at any point, right? So I don't like to get people's hopes up if I'm not in control of it myself. So likewise, a lot of these things that I learn about from big companies come with the caveat of, Eddie, we're letting you know this. And now it's not only, it was Noir City before, because a lot of people very kindly would apprise me of something because they wanted us to show it in advance of the release of the Blu-ray or something. And now with my gig on TCM with Noir Alley, it's kind of the same thing. Like I hear from studios saying, we're going to be doing this restoration next year. You should think about programming it for Noir Alley because, you know, it'll be a brand new restoration. And there are examples of that, but every single one comes with the caveat, but you can't say anything yet.
Yeah.
So I hate to disappoint those people asking those questions, but that's just the reality. I cannot jeopardize my relationships with these companies by you know, being the first one out of the gate to say, yes, there will be a restoration of this. They have to announce it themselves.
And this is from John. John is another question about DOA. In the San Francisco party scenes at DOA, we hear a slide whistle whenever a woman walks past Frank Bigelow. Do you think Rudolph Maté actually wanted that, or was that added when he wasn't looking?
Yeah, a lot of people ask about that scene. You know? I have a hard time believing that it would have been added without his knowledge. because I just can't really understand why it would have been like it would have been Harry or Leo Popkin, the producers of the film, who would have done that.
Yeah.
And I'm not positive why they would have done that, because these are the same guys who made The Well after making DOA, and that's a stone cold serious movie. So they're not jokesters, really. I just think it was, I'm certain it was not written in the script. I cannot believe that would have been written in Rouse and Green's script for DOA. But I just think somebody thought it was funny. Maybe it was the film editor, and he said to Maté, what if we did this? And he said, fine, whatever. I mean, given it doesn't, it's goofy because it's the only instance of anything like that in a noir film. But given Edmund O'Brien's performance in that movie, it's not entirely out of place, if you ask me. Because I've always alleged that his performance in that movie is kind of cartoonish. Just because he's so animated, he's so wound up, he's so, pulled every which way that I always felt like that movie should have more goofy sound effects and even like animation lines when the doors close and he's running, anyway. So I don't have a definitive answer for that, but you just heard everything I have to say on the subject.
Dear Ann and Eddie, are there any plans to show foreign film noirs on Noir Alley? And that's from Mitch in New York.
Well, I don't normally like to take Noir Alley questions on this forum because this is really for the Film Noir Foundation. But the answer to that is yes. I'm putting together the schedule for 2021 right now, and we're figuring out how many foreign films would be acceptable to the majority of the audience. I know there are a lot of people who watch Noir Alley who don't want foreign films, and there are a slightly larger and more vocal contingent that do want foreign films. So we're going to introduce them judiciously in 2021. But if you want foreign films, I'm going to say, the Noir City, the online version of the Noir City Film Festival, is November 13th to the 29th online. If you go to afisilver.com, you will see the whole program. I've actually gotten it. I had to be dragged towards this because I'm all about the communal experience of going to the movies, but after so many months of not being able to do that, I finally realized this is the way forward. And who knows, it may stick even if we go back to live presentations. We may still do stuff online. It all kind of depends on how this one goes. So if you are a supporter of the foundation and you want to see that, because obviously the huge advantage to doing stuff online is that people who can't get to the festivals can watch these movies at home.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there's no set schedule, right? At 6 o'clock in the morning on Friday, November 13th, a number of these films will become available for streaming anytime you want to watch them between the 13th and the 29th of November. So there are huge advantages to it, although, for me, nothing will replace the electricity of a live crowd and having people share that communal experience of watching these movies in a theater, but I'd rather people be able to see the movies.
Yeah, and also, I forgot what I was going to say, so never mind.
Okay. I know that feeling very well. Next question.
I was going to say something slipped right out of my head. And there were also, since we're on the topic of Noir Alley, there were multiple questions about showing specific titles. So can you just let us know, how does the programming selection work on Noir Alley?
Yeah, I'd rather answer that than am I going to show this or am I going to show that? It works that TCM has films in their inventory We call it in window, is the film in window. And that means it is available to screen within a certain period of time. I have said this before, and I guess it's always worth reiterating since new people come on board, that TCM does not really own all the films it shows. It's a misconception that a lot of people have. It started with Ted Turner buying the MGM library, but obviously if you want to be a network showing the breadth of classic cinema, you're not sticking with one library. And so TCM doesn't own all these other libraries. They license the films for screening. And sometimes when people complain, like, oh, they're showing this one again, it's like, well, you have to understand they paid for it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like you maybe get a 1-year term and you pay a fixed amount of money for that 1-year term, or a package of films from whether it's, Paramount or Universal or whatever it might be. And so they'll present me with a list of everything that is in window and say, obviously they would prefer that I choose the films I want to show from this list because they are already paid for. And I'm very pleased to say that the programmers at TCM allow me, a fair amount of latitude to say, well, there are like 6 or 7 titles a year that I go outside that, I color outside the lines. I say, but I really want to show this. Can we work out a way for me to do that? And so that's sort of how it works. But I pick everything that is shown. I'm not told to show anything. And that's kind of it. We try to, as much as possible, line up the shows. If it's somebody's birthday or something, or a particular time of year, we'll try to make that work. But, that's it. I mean, we do get a little ahead. I mean, I've already done everything for Noir Alley through January of 2021. Everything has been recorded. So if something comes up suddenly out of the blue and people say, oh, they should have shown this because so-and-so, like it would have been nice to have a Rhonda Fleming film when Rhonda Fleming passed away.
Yeah, of course.
But you just can't do that, And boy, I have learned the hard way about when I showed Thieves Highway and I talked all about Valentina Cortese.
Yeah.
And I said, she's still alive and living in Milan as the grande dame of Italian theater. And of course, she died 5 days before that aired.
Yeah.
And I just felt so awful, like I had done it, that I had cursed her by saying that, So I'm not joking. I'm actually very self-conscious about giving shout outs to people who are still living when I do the introductions, because I'm just afraid that by the time it airs, they may not be with us anymore. So it's an occupational hazard.
Yeah, and I was going to say for our Canadian friends, sometimes those films are not licensed in Canada, which is why they won't see them there when you do them on Noir Alley.
Yes, and I apologize to those people, but I have to say, when I am making my decisions about what to show, I don't actually have that information available to me. I don't see all the fine print on the terms of the agreement. I just know that they say, you can show this one, and I'll see something and I'll say, oh, great. I choose them because there's something interesting in the movie, or I know that there's fun stuff I can talk about in regards to the film. And I don't say, oh no, that one isn't available in Canada, I better not show it. And it does make me feel bad when I get, or when I see, like on social media, wish we could see it in Canada. Well, I wish you could too, but it's just not going to be a factor in whether or not I decide to show it.
Yeah, and one of the films that was mentioned was Double Thumbs a Ride, and there is a whole thing about the rights issue, which we actually discussed in a previous episode of Ask Eddie. And if you would like to see previous episodes of Ask Eddie, they're on our YouTube channel, which is North City SF, and also on our Facebook page, I created a playlist. So all of our episodes of Ask Eddie are in playlists in both those places. Just so you know. But if you want to give a short answer about Double Thumbs a Ride, feel free.
That's great. Very good, Ann. Thank you for that. That well done, Director of Communications. That was very well done.
That's what I get paid to do.
Yeah, but the Devil Thumbs a Ride thing, I know, is frustrating because it has been restored. We participated in the restoration. The Film Noir Foundation funded the restoration of the soundtrack. The Library of Congress restored the picture. I can show it in Europe, but I cannot show it in North America. And because of that, there will not be, there won't be a digital release of The Devil Thumbs a Ride due to underlying rights issues. One of these days we will, in this Ask Eddie, or maybe I'll get a real expert, a legal expert, to talk about the ABEN decision, which is the Supreme Court decision that really affects all of this stuff as to why you don't see certain movies. It has everything to do with the underlying literary rights to the films. And if the studios can't clear those underlying literary rights or find the heirs who may claim, that they should be remunerated, then they just don't consider it a worthwhile risk to put the film out because there are legal entanglements. And that is the case with The Devil Thumbs a Ride. It's the case with Rogue Cop. It's the case with, I'm not going to go down the list, but there are several others. And generally, when you see a film completely fall off the radar, like Devil Thumbs a Ride, that's the reason.
Sorry, and this is from Jay. Are there any classic film noirs you think are long overdue for a Blu-ray release?
Well, see, this is the thing. Everybody wants to know about what's going on with the Blu-ray releases. And I don't know. I can't answer that right now because
right.
I'm so focused on what we have on our plate. The ones that are overdue for release are the ones that the Film Noir Foundation has restored.
Yes.
Those are the ones that we have to get out there. But, this pandemic.
Right. I should say also, if you are interested in buying copies of our restorations, the ones that are out are available from our partners at Flickr Alley. And so you should definitely check them out because we have some really, really great stuff and the editions are beautiful. And they're dual. So it comes with both Blu-ray and DVD. So if you haven't upgraded to Blu-ray, you can still have a copy.
Precisely. And there are still 5 or 6 movies that we have to release. Yeah. I have to be honest, the pandemic has kind of played hell with all these plans, but they are in the works, and I expect you'll see many more films coming from Flickr Alley and the Film Noir Foundation in 2021.
Pardon me. Let's see. And there was this is another question. Okay. So there's several DVD questions, which you probably don't.
I can't really give good answers to, is this coming out on DVD or not? I really can't. It's very hard for me to give definitive answers in that regard.
And this one is from Dave Rory. Hi, Dave. He does a lot of commenting when we live stream.
Okay.
He's a very nice fellow. Hi, Dave. Who's your favorite noir director and/or producer?
Oh, well, Dave must not have been listening to all of these because I must have said this a few times. Robert Siodmak is my favorite director of film noir. And it's interesting that Dave asks about producers because nobody ever does. And I think it's long overdue that producers who are generally vilified and seen as the bad guys in Hollywood should get credit, because in that classic Hollywood system that we love so much, it was the producers who were really the filmmakers. I mean, they were the ones who put the package together and made the thing happen. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Joan Harrison, who is finally getting her due as a great producer. Mark Hellinger, you know, he only made it to 44 years of age, but I think he would have been, without question, the definitive producer of film noir had he lived. You know, he didn't even make it to Crisscross, you know, which was his project, but that was the last one that he was involved in. And I'm a big fan of Jerry Wald. I think Jerry Wald is a really important figure in that era in Hollywood, and they knew it in Hollywood. I mean, he was, you know, what makes Sammy run, what makes Jerry run. He was the guy, and had a great story sense, you know, as many of these people did. You know, Zanuck was a writer before he took over a studio. I mean, the idea of that today is an impossibility, that a writer would be in charge of the studio. But anyway, there you go. There's no question that Siadmak is my guy for noir. I mean, people know my fondness for Sam Fuller, but that transcends genre. I mean, with Fuller, it's everything: the war movies, the westerns, the noir, everything.
So this is from Nell of Cambridge, Massachusetts. I love the Q&A, and I've been pleased to note a few references to Better Call Saul, which I am finally watching. When Eddie said that Better Call Saul is more noir than Breaking Bad, I found myself in instant agreement. I would like to point out that I said that.
That was you. That was you.
I've given some thought, and I'd say Saul is more noir because the central character's moral tug of war is more protracted and complicated than Walter White's, which I agree with completely. That's what makes it compelling, is it's much more, because Walt doesn't really have much, he doesn't really have any moral struggle, whereas that's really the core of Saul, is watching someone's moral decay. And as I'm guessing you've deduced by now, this is probably just another way to ask you, the tedious old chestnut, what makes something noir?
Wow. Well, since Nell is asking about characters, I think she's kind of hit it on the head. I mean, these characters are morally compromised, and I don't, you know, I don't subscribe to the thing where it has to end badly. You know, that's what makes it noir, is that they self-destruct and they all, you know, crumble at the end, or you know, die for their misdeeds, because then you're going to disqualify a lot of films that obviously were noir, that were made in Hollywood, where the code wouldn't allow them to end that way.
Right.
But it's interesting that you say that distinction, and it's still, I have not really gotten into Better Call Saul. Not, I'm sure I'll love it. I just haven't been able to commit yet. But it was interesting that Vince Gilligan said that the point of Breaking Bad was that he wanted to write a story where the trajectory of the central character was from an empathetic everyman to being the villain. So his character trajectory was just going from high school chemistry teacher to being drug lord villain. Like, that was the point. Like, how does that happen to somebody, right? Which is very noir. But as I hear you describe Better Call Saul, you know, it sounds like Saul Goodman is faced with these moral quandaries throughout. He never fully becomes the villain of the piece. He just has to deal with these moral quandaries throughout the series, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, I'm on Reddit a lot. Like, I watched the episode when it broadcast. Ted, who also works for the Film Noir Foundation, I exchange a bunch of texts, and then I go on Reddit, and people are always saying, oh, this is when he turns into Saul Goodman. This is when he turns into Saul Goodman. And it's been like, oh, it feels like almost every episode people say that. And that's what makes it so good. You see kind of going back and forth in this sort of slow, and it's much more realistic too, I think. You know what I mean? And that's how people are, right? You make these series of decisions and your life starts going this way or that way because of the decisions you make.
Yeah. Well, and I should point out that both of these shows are, the creation of Vince Gilligan. So he was doing, obviously doing two different things and taking two different approaches to this kind of material. But I'm very much looking forward to long form television, man. It is a commitment.
No, it really is. And I'm the same way. I'm real picky about it. And this is a question that coming up next, actually two different people asked it. And it's on, what is your take on the HBO Perry Mason? And this is something that you talked extensively about in a previous episode. And you can watch that on our playlist on Facebook or YouTube. North City SF.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
No, I love this question. This is like my favorite question. If you were, this is from Brian in Toronto. If you were a studio head in the 40s or 50s and could order up the perfect noir, who would be in it and where would it be set? Name 2 male leads, 2 female leads, and which character actors you would want in it. And let's keep that to 2 as well.
Wow. Okay. So this is interesting. 5 years ago, I'm going to say, at the Turner Classic Movies Classic Film Festival in Hollywood, I did this as a presentation with Rose McGowan, right? Because Rose is a huge noir fan. Rose actually had the old RKO sign from the studio in her living room in Hollywood. She doesn't live in Hollywood anymore, as some of you may know. And we did this together. She and I did this where we pretended we were the heads of like rival studios and we were competing to put the perfect film noir together. And how are we going to do this? So I'll give my answer, and then maybe if you have your version, you can.
I do.
Okay, good. Okay, so I would say that obviously I'm going to try everything to get Robert Siodmak to direct the film.
Yeah.
I would probably want the screenplay to be written by, since I know that Ben Heck doesn't really care about what he writes that much because he just taken the paycheck, as great as he is. I'm going to choose Jonathan Latimer as my screenwriter. I'm sure people are familiar with his credits because I just think he was very, very reliable and had a great wit, but wrote really compelling screenplays. So I'm going to take Latimer. The trick, this is all a fantasy, so I don't have to be stuck. I don't have to be stuck with knowing, like, well, which studio is it? Because if I want Mitchum, right, he's under contract to RKO.
Right.
If I want Dana Andrews, he's at Fox, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, it depends on what the story is, because it's not just, I don't want to miscast somebody.
No.
But I would say, you know, how can I say I don't want Humphrey Bogart? I mean, I
Right.
kind of want Humphrey Bogart because it's almost foolproof, because it doesn't matter whether he's playing the villain or the hero, right? He's going to be great either way because he's done that. He has proven that he can do, you know, In a Lonely Place and Deadline USA and The Desperate Hours, and you know he could go either way. So whichever. So who would I like to see him playing opposite in a film? Wow, that's really interesting. I don't know. I'll say Dana Andrews, you know, because I really like Dana Andrews in these films. For the women, you know, there has to be a part in there for Gloria Graham. And I will say Jane Greer as the other woman, because I know that they were friends in real life. So
Cool.
I would have loved for them to have made a movie together, because they were both, this may sound weird for noir, but they were both really funny. They both had great senses of humor, and it would have made for a very entertaining set to have the two of them on the set. Obviously, the supporting cast, if there's a cop, he's going to be played by Regis Toomey. If there's a weasel, he's going to be Elijah Cook or Whit Bissell. You know, if there's a torpedo, it's got to be Charles McGraw. I mean, after that, it becomes pretty obvious you're casting to type. And that's what we love about all these movies is that, you know, I'll find a part in there for Esther Howard.
Oh, she's great.
I'll find a part for Ruth Donnelly later in her career because she didn't get as much to do as she did in those fabulous pre-code movies. So there you go. It's fun. Okay, so what's yours? What's yours, Anne?
So I definitely set it in San Francisco.
Oh, I forgot where it was set. Yeah.
So where's your set?
How could it be any place but San Francisco, right?
Okay, that was probably obvious for both of us. I hadn't thought about I thought about a director, and I thought either Siod Mack or even Ida Lupino, depending on what the material is. But now I'm thinking if I had Sam Fuller write it, then I want Ida Lupino to direct it. And then for the two male leads, Dan Duryea, I know you're all surprised, and Robert Ryan, because I'd like to see them playing off each other. For the two female leads, Barbara Stanwyck and Ida Lupino, because I would have loved to see them in a movie together. And for the character actors, Percy Hilton, because I just want him in there. And then also one of my favorite character actors is actually Joseph Kalia.
Yeah.
Who is, I love him so much. So I would like him to be in it. So
wow, Anne, I want to see your movie more than mine. Seriously, I mean that's really cool to see Stanwyck and Lupino in a movie together with Robert Ryan and Dan Duryea. Come on, I'm all in. I'm all in. And Joseph Kalia is fantastic. I think his performance in Touch of Evil is one of the great supporting characters of all. He's just fantastic in that movie. He's great in everything he does, but he's we need to do a story about him in the magazine.
Yeah, we really do.
We've never done a piece about him because he's in a lot of stuff. You know, he appears as in Noir. He appears like as early as The Glass Key in 42. You know, where he plays Nick Varna, and then he's throughout. You know, he's in Gilda and he's in Deadline at Dawn. He pops up in all these movies, and he always has a great first shot when he's revealed, you know, because he's got that face, and that's a really good choice, Anne. Cheers.
Thank you.
You outproduced me on that one.
Yeah, and I just like I said, I just really love him, and I recommend. Yeah, sometime if you've never done it, folks, go onto IMDb and look at the things he's been in. He had a remarkable career, and he's memorable and great in those films. Okay, and the second question from Brian is, who from that era never made a noir, but would have been great and should have made one?
I answered this question before, and I can't remember what I said. I can't remember where I answered it, and I think I said, I was kind of desperately trying to find an actor who didn't make a noir.
Yeah.
Because it's surprising when you really get into it how many people did that you wouldn't expect. Like Rosalind Russell. Rosalind Russell never made a noir. Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she did.
You know?
It's a good one too.
The Velvet Touch in 48, and you know there's a lot of examples of that where you think it didn't happen. Clark Gable never made a noir, right? And I don't know if he should have, but you know that Gable in the late 40s was different than the earlier Clark Gable, and he was you know when you see him in something like The Misfits, where he has aged so much and he's really weathered and spectacular in that film. It would have been nice if somewhere in like the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, if Gable had maybe done something like that. he could have played my father in it if we were doing an adaptation in 1949 of my novel The Distance. Either William Powell or Clark Gable would have played my dad, because I mean that was the total look. So anyway, here's a variation on that. It's like recasting noir. Like if you could change something and put somebody else in the part. And I do that a lot more often than thinking about who do I just want to, like the movie Tight Spot, the Phil Carlson movie Tight Spot, that stars Ginger Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
She is so bad in that movie. And I don't dislike Ginger Rogers, but she is so wrong in that movie. And Gloria Graham would have been so right in that film that's like, oh my God, how could they not have seen this? Anyway, that's just, I'm tossing that out there for what it's worth.
Exactly. And this is sort of, wait a minute, do I want to do this one here? Yeah, let's do this one. In past episode, Eddie mentioned casting William Holden as Philip Marlowe in the 1950s. Thinking about things you would have liked to have seen.
As Marlowe, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Which actress who rarely or never did a noir would you like to have seen in noir roles? My vote goes to Elizabeth Taylor.
Well, I kind of think of A Place in the Sun as, grade A noir, but I mean, it's a noir. So
we showed it at Noir City.
We did. Elizabeth Taylor, so she did kind of make a film noir. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for this. No. Because if I said somebody, I mean, I could just say it, not because people are going to go, oh yeah, great. But it's like somebody that you would never expect to make a film noir. Could they do it? Could Greer Garson make a film noir? Because, people didn't expect Tyrone Power to make a film noir, right? Because he was so heroic and such a swashbuckler and everything. Maybe the same is true of Greer Garson. Could she have been a noir dame? I don't know. I mean, she was never given that opportunity. I don't think she ever wanted that opportunity. But see, like Loretta Young made noir, and she kind of is, to me, is in that Greer Garson mold. I could have seen, because I love The Accused. Loretta Young in The Accused is a fantastic movie. And, I could have seen Greer Garson in that part. She could have done that. Anyway.
Well, I mean, and let's face it, one of my all-time favorite film noirs, I mean, I think one of the greatest ones ever made, co-stars Deanna Durbin and Gene Kelly.
Yes, Christmas Holiday, fantastic. Yeah, and there's an example of the weirdest casting of all, both of them.
I know. It's amazing, and it's just like it's a personal favorite, and it just goes to show you never know, who's going to be. And also, it also shows you how many people were in noirs that you would not expect. I mean, that's the other thing about trying to come up with someone is you'd be really surprised about how many people were actually in noirs that you wouldn't have guessed would ever have been in one. Yeah.
Directed by Robert Siodmak.
Yep.
And it's a good thing you brought this film up, Ann. Not only directed by Robert Siodmak, my favorite director, and I love that movie, but that's another film that has fallen victim to the Aben decision. You can't see it. We've been able to show it several times at Noir City, but it is now out of circulation until the rights issues get cleared up. The rights have, Universal had it, the underlying rights are with the Somerset Maugham Literary Estate, and it's kind of up in the air right now as to how that's going to be resolved. Because, the materials are at the studio, but the rights are not any longer. Yeah. So something has to happen to bring these worlds together.
Yeah, and it's really a shame about that one, because it's one of my all-time favorites.
Extraordinary film.
Yeah, it's beautiful and tragic and intense and just everything you could want, and it's just gorgeously shot. It is, in the art design is gorgeous too. It's a beautiful looking
Woody
film.
Burdell, the cinematographer. It's sensational.
Okay, so we should probably break here. So what we're going to do is, we do have more questions, and so next week, same time, 7 p.m. Pacific time, next Thursday, you'll get to see us do the rest of the questions, because we had like a ton of questions come in, and thank you everybody, and they're all really good questions, so we want to get to all of them. So yeah, so and don't forget, if you're interested in submitting questions at some point, join our email list, because that's how we solicit the questions that we answer, and you can do that at filmnoirfoundation.org. Just go there and you can subscribe to our email and get your question answered someday. Okay.
Okay, very good. So if you didn't hear your question come up or it wasn't answered, it will be next week, because we're determined to get through this whole list. But we don't want to make people listen for over an hour at a crack. So
yeah,
we'll see you next week, same place, same bat time, same bat
channel.
We'll be
I almost said that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll see you then.
Good night.